Few filmmakers in history forged a bond with their actors as profound as Akira Kurosawa did. Known as the Emperor of Cinema, Kurosawa wasn't just a director. He was an architect of emotion, building entire worlds out of human faces. Over a career spanning 50 years, he created stories that defined Japanese and world cinema. Rashomon, Ikiru, Seven Samurai, and Yojimbo among them. But behind those masterpieces were the performers who gave his vision its pulse. Before his death in 1998, Kurosawa spoke in interviews and letters about the actors who had shaped his art. The storm-like Toshiro Mifune, the compassionate Takashi Shimura, the cunning Tatsuya Nakadai, and the supporting players whose warmth, humor, and humility completed his cinematic universe. He didn't just direct them, he collaborated with them as equals, believing that truth on screen could only emerge through shared trust. In this video, we'll count down the 6 actors Kurosawa admired most, exploring his real words about them, the stories behind their performances, and how each embodied a piece of his soul. Together, they reveal the secret to Kurosawa's genius, that even in his grandest epics, it was always the human heart that mattered most. Number 6. Bokuzen Hidari, The Face of Innocence. Among Akira Kurosawa's recurring collaborators, Bokuzen Hidari stands out as one of the most quietly powerful presences in his films. Born in 1894, Hidari was not a typical movie star. He lacked the rugged features of a leading man or the theatrical charisma of a performer like Toshiro Mifune. Instead, his face seemed carved out of suffering itself, lined with empathy, humility, and exhaustion. Kurosawa cast him not for glamour, but for his ability to embody the fragile humanity that runs through so much of his work. Hidari's most iconic performance came in Seven Samurai, 1954, where he played Yohei, the trembling, tearful farmer whose fear mirrors that of every villager in the film. Yohei is terrified of the bandits, terrified of dying, and even terrified of his own shadow. Yet Kurosawa treats him not as a joke, but as a symbol of the ordinary person caught in forces far larger than himself. When Yohei weeps before the samurai, clutching his water wheel and begging for protection, we are not laughing at cowardice. We are witnessing desperation distilled into its purest form. Kurosawa's camera lingers on Hidari's face long after his words stop, letting the silence communicate more than dialogue ever could. Film historian Donald Ritchie once wrote that Kurosawa saw virtue in weakness, not as sentiment but as truth. That sentiment perfectly describes his affection for Hidari. In interviews, Kurosawa often spoke about his empathy for society's underdogs, those who labor unseen or who are too gentle for a brutal world. Casting Hidari again and again was a way of honoring that ideal. Between Ikiru, 1952, The Lower Depths, 1957, and Seven Samurai, Hidari's characters form a kind of emotional trilogy. 3 portraits of endurance in the face of despair. On set, Hidari reportedly struggled with self-confidence. Fellow actors remembered that he often worried he wasn't performing well enough. Kurosawa's response was patience. He believed Hidari's natural awkwardness was part of what made him authentic. Unlike other directors who demanded theatrical precision, Kurosawa encouraged Hidari to remain unpolished, trusting that sincerity would shine through. The result was a performer who seemed incapable of falseness. Even when Yohei's eyes dart nervously or his mouth quivers, nothing feels rehearsed. It's life unfolding in real time. Hidari's performances also provided a vital counterbalance to Kurosawa's epic scale. In stories filled with samurai battles, moral tests, and sweeping philosophical questions, Hidari reminded audiences of the simple people whose fates hung in the balance. His characters rarely shaped events, but they made us feel the weight of those events more deeply. Through him, Kurosawa ensured that heroism and tragedy were always filtered through the eyes of the powerless. Today, it's easy to overlook actors like Hidari in favor of the legends who dominated Kurosawa's posters. Yet the director's genius lay in surrounding his larger-than-life figures with faces of ordinary humanity. Without Hidari, the samurai's courage would mean less, because we would not fully grasp what they were protecting. His trembling, tearful expressions are not weakness. They are the very reason we care about courage at all. What emotions do Hidari's performances stir in you? Pity, affection, or recognition? Do you think modern cinema still leaves room for actors who embody quiet, unheroic vulnerability, the way Bokuzen Hidari did? Number 5. Kamatari Fujiwara, the nervous comic. Kamatari Fujiwara was one of the unsung pillars of Akira Kurosawa's repertory company, a man whose nervous laughter and jittery expressions added a human heartbeat to even the grandest epics. Born in 1905, Fujiwara came from a theater background and first met Kurosawa when both worked under director Kajiro Yamamoto at Toho Studios. Kurosawa immediately recognized that Fujiwara possessed something rare, a comedic instinct rooted not in exaggeration but in truth. His comedy always felt like desperation just barely kept under control. Over the course of more than a dozen Kurosawa films, he became the voice of the ordinary citizen, full of flaws, greed, humor, and a surprising moral compass. Fujiwara's performances are instantly recognizable. In Ikiru, 1952, he appears as the bureaucratic subsection chief whose pompous chatter and endless meetings drive Takashi Shimura's Watanabe to despair. In Seven Samurai, 1954, he plays the peasant Manzo, a frightened father who hides his daughter from the samurai out of both fear and pride. And in The Hidden Fortress, 1958, he transforms into the scheming Tahei, a comic peasant obsessed with gold who constantly bickers with his partner Matashichi. Each role reveals a different shade of cowardice and humanity, sometimes funny, sometimes frustrating, but always real. Kurosawa never mocked Fujiwara's characters. He let audiences laugh with them, not at them. Tahei and Matashichi's foolish quarrels in The Hidden Fortress became so vivid and endearing that decades later, George Lucas openly cited them as the inspiration for R2, D2, and C-3PO in Star Wars. That alone shows the power of Fujiwara's performance. His peasant humor transcended cultures and influenced one of the most beloved film series of all time. When viewers laugh at his greed or panic, they are really laughing at themselves, at the parts of human nature that tremble when faced with danger, yet still crave a piece of the treasure. Kurosawa's decision to keep casting Fujiwara stemmed from trust. The director once said that every film, no matter how serious, needs moments that let the audience breathe. Fujiwara provided those moments without ever breaking the illusion. His anxious mannerisms felt natural, his timing impeccable. He could pivot from panic to pathos in an instant. One moment clutching his head in fear, the next bursting into tears of gratitude or relief. That emotional elasticity made him indispensable to Kurosawa's tonal balance, especially in stories where humor and tragedy intertwine. Behind the scenes, colleagues describe Fujiwara as gentle and self-effacing, much like the characters he portrayed. He viewed acting as craft, not fame, and often credited Kurosawa with teaching him to listen rather than perform. Kurosawa, in turn, valued Fujiwara's intuition. He would simply give a direction like, "You're scared, but try to hide it," and Fujiwara would instinctively find the perfect rhythm. Their collaboration embodied Kurosawa's philosophy that cinema thrives on contrast. Courage beside cowardice, grandeur beside simplicity. When we revisit Fujiwara's performances today, what stands out is not his comedy, but his empathy. Beneath the flustered movements and quivering voice lies a recognition that fear and greed are universal. Kurosawa used him as a mirror to the audience, a reminder that heroism isn't born from perfection, but from confronting our own smallness. Without Fujiwara's nervous humor, Kurosawa's worlds of warriors and kings would risk losing their humanity. How do you interpret Fujiwara's nervous humor? As mere comic relief or as social commentary? Do you think modern blockbusters still allow for this kind of flawed, relatable character amidst spectacle? Number 4. Minoru Chiaki, the good-natured soul. Minoru Chiaki was one of Akira Kurosawa's most loyal and endearing collaborators. An actor whose warm smile and gentle presence could humanize even the bleakest stories. Born in 1917, Chiaki was part of what many critics call Kurosawa's family of faces, the stock company of performers who defined the emotional texture of his early masterpieces. While other actors embodied strength, intellect, or ambition, Chiaki specialized in goodness. He radiated decency and humor without sentimentality. To Kurosawa, he represented the ordinary man's courage, the quiet resilience that keeps humanity afloat even when chaos reigns. Chiaki's signature performance came in Seven Samurai, 1954, as Heihachi Hayashida, the easygoing wood-chopping samurai who lifts spirits during desperate times. While his comrades strategize and spar, Heihachi cracks jokes, teases his fellow warriors, and distracts villagers from their fear. His optimism becomes a lifeline, a fragile shield against the darkness of war. When Heihachi dies mid-film, Kurosawa films the moment with heartbreaking restraint, a sudden loss followed by silence. The laughter disappears, and the audience feels the emotional void he leaves behind. Chiaki's presence is proof that levity in Kurosawa's universe is not trivial. It's essential for survival. Kurosawa valued Chiaki's naturalistic acting. Unlike more theatrical Japanese performers of the era, Chiaki approached his roles with understatement. His gestures were small, his expression subtle, his timing impeccable. On set, Kurosawa reportedly called him a man who can smile even in rainstorms. That quality made Chiaki invaluable. Whether as the puzzled woodcutter in Rashomon, 1950, or the timid priest in Throne of Blood, 1957, he was always the conscience of the story, the one character who reminded audiences of empathy in a world of betrayal and bloodshed. Beyond his warmth, Chiaki also possessed technical skill. He could shift tone mid-scene without ever seeming forced. In Rashomon, he listens to conflicting testimonies about a murder, his eyes darting between disbelief and sorrow. In The Hidden Fortress, 1958, he plays a soldier whose loyalty is both comic and noble, anchoring the film's adventurous chaos. Kurosawa relied on that ability to maintain balance. His films often oscillated between tragedy and absurdity, and Chiaki's light touch made those transitions seamless. He didn't command the camera, he invited it to stay close. After Kurosawa's golden era, Chiaki continued working steadily in film and television, but his legacy remains tied to the director who understood him best. Their collaboration gave Japanese cinema a warmth rarely seen in its war-torn post-war years. For Kurosawa, Chiaki was proof that goodness could be as cinematic as violence. His laughter echoed long after the credits rolled, a quiet defiance against despair. What does Minoru Chiaki's presence bring to Kurosawa's ensemble stories? Do you think modern films still value characters who embody simple kindness amid conflict? Number 3. Tatsuya Nakadai, the Serpent antagonist. By the time Tatsuya Nakadai entered Akira Kurosawa's orbit, the director's long partnership with Toshiro Mifune was nearing its end. Kurosawa, always drawn to contrast and duality, found in Nakadai a completely different kind of performer. Quieter, more cerebral, and charged with a hypnotic stillness that could be as dangerous as any sword. Where Mifune burned like wildfire, Nakadai was ice. Kurosawa once described the two men as a stray dog and a snake. Mifune's characters lunged with raw instinct. Nakadai's waited, coiled and watchful, ready to strike with precision. That tension between brute force and elegance became one of the defining contrasts of Kurosawa's late career. Nakadai's first significant role under Kurosawa came in Yojimbo, 1961, as Unosuke, the slick young gunfighter who challenges Mifune's Ronin. In an era when samurai films still worshipped swordplay, Nakadai's pistol became a symbol of modernity invading tradition. A detail Kurosawa emphasized to show that cunning and technology could overpower even the fiercest warrior. Nakadai's smirk, his feline movements, his calm arrogance, all made Unosuke terrifying without ever shouting a word. In the climactic duel, his confidence dissolves in seconds, replaced by shock as his own weapon turns useless. That moment distilled Nakadai's gift. He could express moral collapse through silence. Kurosawa recognized this sophistication and wrote increasingly layered roles for him. In Sanjuro, 1962, Nakadai's Muroto embodies the corrupted mirror image of the film's hero, a man who values order so obsessively that it curdles into cruelty. By the time Kurosawa cast him again in Kagemusha, 1980, and Ran, 1985, Nakadai had become the emotional vessel for the director's late-life meditations on power and decay. As Lord Hidatora in Ran, his performance borders on Shakespearean grandeur, a monarch slipping into madness amid the ruins of his own ambition. Covered in white ash, trembling as he walks through the battlefield strewn with corpses, Nakadai turns tragedy into ritual. Kurosawa later said that directing Ran felt like returning to the stage of no theater, and Nakadai's Stillness made that metaphor real. Their collaboration also reflected Kurosawa's evolving worldview. In his early films, evil was external: bandits, generals, or corrupt officials. By the time he worked with Nakadai, evil had become internal, born from pride, obsession, and delusion. Nakadai could embody that subtle rot perfectly. His eyes, often described as polite yet predatory, carried both nobility and menace, reminding audiences that tragedy often begins with self-deception. Today, Nakadai remains a revered figure in Japanese cinema, but his work with Kurosawa stands as a masterclass in controlled emotion. Watching him is like watching a snake move through tall grass, mesmerizing, elegant, and unsettling in its inevitability. Kurosawa's world needed that kind of danger, not the chaos of rage, but the quiet poison of pride. Do you find Nakadai's calm menace more chilling than Mifune's raw intensity? Which of his Kurosawa roles, Unosuke, Muroto, or Hidatora, best captures the duality between power and fragility? Number 2, Takashi Shimura, Kurosawa's moral compass. If Toshiro Mifune was the embodiment of Akira Kurosawa's raw power, then Takashi Shimura was its conscience.
Leave this place. Get out of my house.
Calm, introspective, and endlessly expressive, Shimura appeared in 21 of Kurosawa's films, more than any other actor. Together they shaped the moral architecture of Kurosawa's cinema. Where Mifune roared, Shimura listened. Where others fought or schemed, Shimura observed. His face, etched with quiet wisdom, could convey more heartbreak than a page of dialogue ever could. Kurosawa once said he trusted Shimura completely. When I look at him through the viewfinder, I know what I'm seeing is real. Shimura's most iconic role came in Ikiru, 1952, as Kanji Watanabe, the weary bureaucrat who learns he is dying of cancer. The story of a man rediscovering meaning at the end of his life might sound sentimental in lesser hands, but Kurosawa and Shimura transformed it into something profound. To embody Watanabe, Kurosawa reportedly showed Shimura a photograph of a monkey and said, "This is him." It was not an insult, but an instruction, a way of expressing Watanabe's timid posture, his hunched, apologetic gait, his frightened eyes. Shimura took that image and built a performance of haunting physicality. Every cough, every nervous bow, every hesitant step revealed a man both invisible and infinite. In the film's most unforgettable moment, Watanabe sits on a playground swing in the snow, softly singing the 1915 ballad Gondola no Uta. The scene lasts barely a minute, yet it feels eternal. His voice cracks as he sways, the world fading behind him, the camera closing in until only the quiet rhythm of the swing remains. Kurosawa later said the scene worked because Shimura made death gentle. It is one of cinema's rare portrayals of mortality that offers peace instead of terror. Shimura's gift was empathy. From the wise commander Kembe Shimada in Seven Samurai 1954, To the guilt-ridden detective in Stray Dog, 1949, he radiated humanity. He could lead warriors or comfort beggars and remain utterly believable. His characters never pretended to be larger than life. They were life. Flawed, frightened, and yet full of grace. In Kurosawa's moral universe, Shimura was the guide who showed audiences how to stay human amid violence and despair. Off-screen, Shimura was as quiet as the men he played. Colleagues described him as soft-spoken, polite, and entirely devoid of ego. He cared little for fame, once saying that acting was a way to understand other souls. Kurosawa admired that humility, often calling Shimura his moral center. After Redbeard, 1965, they drifted apart as Kurosawa pursued different styles of filmmaking. But the emotional foundation Shimura laid remained in every later work. When we think of Kurosawa's cinema, the swirling rain, the noble deaths, the eternal struggle for decency, it is Shimura's face that grounds it. He didn't play heroes or villains. He played people trying against impossible odds to do the right thing. And in that, he was perhaps Kurosawa's purest reflection. What does Shimura's performance in Ikiru teach us about finding meaning in ordinary life? Do you think his quiet style would still resonate in today's louder, faster films? Number 1, Toshiro Mifune, The Fearless Storm. No partnership in world cinema rivals the creative thunderstorm that erupted when Akira Kurosawa met Toshiro Mifune. Over the course of 16 films, from Drunken Angel, 1948, to Redbeard, 1965, they forged one of the most electrifying director-actor collaborations ever seen. Mifune was the body and face of Kurosawa's philosophy, volatile, instinctive, and larger than life, yet always human. If Kurosawa was the architect, Mifune was the earthquake that shook the structure. Kurosawa discovered him almost by accident. During Toho Studios' New Faces auditions, Mifune stormed into the room and performed with such unrestrained fury that the judges were stunned. Kurosawa later said he was reeling around the room in a violent frenzy, as if he were a wounded beast trying to break loose. In that moment, he saw what Japanese cinema had never quite possessed before. A man whose raw physicality could match Hollywood's legends, yet whose eyes carried a distinctly Japanese depth. Ordinary actors need 10 feet of film to register an impression, Kurosawa once remarked, but Mifune needs only 3. Their first collaboration, Drunken Angel, set the tone. Mifune's gangster Matsunaga, coughing blood while trying to swagger through the slums, mirrored post-war Japan itself, infected yet defiant. Kurosawa said that Mifune's energy gave the entire film its heartbeat. Over the next 2 decades, the director wrote roles specifically for him. The weary samurai Sanjuro, the bandit Tajomaru, the warlord Washizu, the noble Dr. Need. Together they explored every shade of the human soul: greed, compassion, madness, courage. In Rashomon, 1950, Mifune's performance as the bandit is animalistic, sensual, and grotesque, shifting from laughter to tears in a heartbeat. In Seven Samurai, 1954, his Kikuchiyo is part clown, part warrior, the illegitimate son of farmers who longs to be a samurai. He stumbles, shouts, weeps, and ultimately sacrifices himself in a blaze of honor. That role, more than any other, captured Mifune's gift for embodying contradictions, strength and vulnerability, arrogance and heartbreak. Kurosawa once compared directing him to pointing a missile. You didn't steer it, you aimed it and prayed. Off camera, the 2 men shared deep respect but clashed fiercely. Mifune's intensity often collided with Kurosawa's meticulous control. On the set of Redbeard, tensions boiled as the actor was forced to grow a real beard for more than 2 years of filming, preventing him from accepting other roles. Yet the finished film, depicting a young doctor's moral awakening under a wise mentor, became their final masterpiece together. Afterward, they parted ways, each wounded by pride but bound by mutual admiration. Decades later, Kurosawa admitted that losing Mifune was one of the great regrets of his life. Mifune was not just an actor for Kurosawa, He was the storm that gave life to his universe. Their collaboration showed that cinema could be both mythic and human, brutal and compassionate, as unpredictable as the weather and as eternal as art itself. When you watch Mifune in Seven Samurai or Yojimbo, do you sense the controlled chaos Kurosawa described? Can you think of another director-actor duo whose chemistry rivals theirs? Their collective work forms a tapestry of human experience. The desperate, the noble, the foolish, the kind. Together, they gave Kurosawa's worlds their heartbeat. His camera might have captured rain, fire, and battle, but it was their eyes that made those elements feel alive. Through them, Kurosawa translated the moral questions that obsessed him. What does it mean to live with honor? How do we act with compassion in a corrupt world? Why do we fight, and what is worth fighting for? So as you revisit Seven Samurai, Ikiru, or Ran, watch closely. Not just for Kurosawa's genius, but for the hearts that beat within his frames. These actors were his true legacy, the living soul of his art.